So today we saw Tesla stock close up higher than from the opening of today's trading session. However, in reality, Tesla stock still closed lower than last Friday's trading session. Now, there was a lot covered this morning in the Push and Profit private group. However, one of the notable things I mentioned to the group today was that Tesla in China had announced a price reduction of 1,950 US dollars for the Model Y long range and performance, which is most likely the underlying reasoning why we saw a lot of selling pressure in the after and pre-markets for Tesla stock. Now, looking at Tesla stock from a fundamental perspective, one of the things that was very notable in the last earnings that we got from Tesla was the profit margins compressing. And so hearing the announcement of more price cuts for Tesla, yes, it's in another country, but it was definitely something that was disappointing for a lot of investors. However, the market always does provide opportunity, as one of the trade ideas I called out in the Push and Profit private group was to go ahead and look into 310 puts on Microsoft once the price is greater than $323.85, which if we take a look into Microsoft stock today, it was definitely a sniper trade idea that had two opportunities to go ahead and take advantage of shorting at Microsoft for those levels. But although we had some great trade ideas for today, I want to turn our attention to something that was having a lot of buzz around the markets. And that was the fact that Michael Burry, famous for the Big Short, bought a bunch of bearish options against the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. For example, we can see that he's holding over $1 billion position, pretty much shorting the overall markets. Now, although Michael Burry is often praised as a market wizard when it comes to shorting the markets, one of the things I often have with Michael Burry is the issue that if you call out a market collapse 50 times and you get it right 2 times, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a market genius, right? For example, we saw a tweet from Michael Burry earlier this year announcing that he was wrong and being bearish in the markets, in which he later on deleted the tweet. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not trying to discredit Michael Burry, as I think he has made phenomenal trades in his career. However, I do want us to acknowledge that we just can't simply or blindly follow any of these fund managers, and we should only pay attention to what they're doing as just another data point for us to take note of. Now, I've highlighted in my YouTube community post that Renaissance Technology, which is arguably the most successful hedge fund in history, recently also disclosed some massive changes in their portfolio, and I highlighted some of their notables, with some of their largest purchases being Apple and Nvidia, and some of their largest sales being Amazon and Tesla. Now, again, I don't think you should follow any fund manager absolutely blindly. However, again, it is notable that we are seeing some bearish, sentiment when it comes to a lot of these fund managers, which is something that I've highlighted on this channel and also exclusively to the Push and Profit private group, that the beginning of the year was going to be very optimistic. However, the second half of the year was going to be a different story. But with that said, I want to go ahead and hop into my laptop and cover some notable topics in regards to Tesla, both from the perspective of the short term and also the long term. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop taking a look at Tesla stock. Now, my overarching view on Tesla hasn't changed much, and I want to highlight something. So the overall focus of the theme for this week is really yields and the strength of the US dollar. As this week a 10-year treasury move under 4% will remain a strong catalyst for markets to recover, right? That's why, one of the things I often highlight is that I'm very hyper selective and targeted with the trade ideas I call out. On this channel, I talk a lot about Tesla, but some of the ideas I call out that are hyper selective are, exclusive to the Push and Profit private group, such as, Microsoft's trade. And so there's some things that are, seeing upside and some downside, right? Now, what are some other things we want to talk about? Well, the odds of seeing a hike in September or November have fallen dramatically, and as we break out of this bottoming period, right, that should provide somewhat of an upside and a relief in the 2-year and 10-year treasury, right? Now, something else we want to focus is, and I've mentioned this publicly on YouTube, is energy is going to remain an important item to watch, as I've noted that this is an element that can throw a wrench into projections if we see like substantial upward movements in energy, right? So we talked about gas, right? And I know we're talking about Tesla, and we're going to go ahead and go back into Tesla, but I'm sure many of us around the country, regardless if you're located in the south, the north, or the east or west, you're seeing, if you're driving like an internal combustion engine, right, or you don't even have to, right, you could drive your Tesla down the road, you're seeing that gas prices are once again rising up. And that's definitely a concern, as we're not sure if the Federal Reserve is going to look at this as its only headline CPI. It's not the core inflation. And we're not sure if the feds are going to see this as a threat and continue to, not hike, but pause rates at these elevated levels for longer. And so that's a big concern. And so that's why we definitely want to pay attention to oil, right? And gas and, just energy in general, right? Now, taking a look at Tesla stock, let's go ahead and go to a weekly time frame, right? One of the things I've highlighted is, I'm still bearish on Tesla in the short term, but I don't think that we're going to continue going straight down. Yeah, for a while we've been selling off, but we may start to see somewhat of a relief, as I mentioned earlier. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe that Tesla's going to break out from this descending downtrend and continue going up to make all-time highs right away. I often say I'm bullish on Tesla in the long term. It's just right now there's a lot of uncertainty in the overall economy and in the market. And some of the things that kind of confirms this belief is that we're seeing these fund managers also appear to be very bearish, right? I previously made a video about Cathie Wood and how she believes that there is an issue of a possible recession coming up with the issue of labor, right? We also covered about Michael Burry earlier in this video, and then we also talked about some other funds, right? Now, it's important, again, to stress this, that you don't just want to copy what these fund managers do. For example, if we take a look at Cathie Wood and we take a look at ARK Invest, if we just go ahead and find it and we zoom out, we could see that, Cathie Wood has had an amazing 2020, just like the overall market and everyone else, but she severely underperformed for the last couple of years. And so I don't take everything that Cathie Wood says, 100%. I take it with a grain of salt. And so I do kind of understand where she's coming from with the idea of a recession with the issue of the labor markets. But again, I don't just copy what she does. Otherwise, you may be down as bad as she is, right? And again, we're seeing a lot of bearish sentiment from a lot of these other funds. So it's definitely notable. Also, I often say that you want to pay attention to what these politicians are doing. And one of the things I've highlighted was a couple of weeks ago, but we're seeing more politicians sell, and we're also seeing them kind of bet against the market. And that's also pretty interesting. I always say that someone is in the know, right? And with these politicians, I know some people wonder, well, why do you follow what these politicians do, right? Well, oftentimes they have decision-making, where they have the power to influence some laws, right? And some policy changes that can severely impact companies. I mean, it could be tomorrow morning where there's a law that's passed or just an idea pushed out there for maybe money going into companies like Tesla, or maybe defunding companies. I mean, at the end of the day, these politicians, they definitely hold a lot of power. Just as I talk about the central bank, right? We talk about Fed Chairman Jerome Powell and a lot of these other central bankers. And tomorrow, one of the things that we want to pay attention to is going to be Minneapolis Fed President Kashari, where he's going to speak. And the reason why it's important to hear what he says is that he's actually a voting member for the FOMC. And so he actually has a vote or a decision on what goes on with monetary policy. And so, that's going to come out at 11 a.m. and we absolutely want to pay attention to that. What else do we have tomorrow? Well, we have the U.S. retail sales, right? So we want to see how retail is doing. But we also have, along with that, the import price index. So we have some economic data coming out this week that we want to pay attention to. And then, of course, later on this week, on the 16th, we have the Federal Reserve or the FOMC meeting minutes, where we're going to most likely see dissent within the Federal Reserve. But we're going to see how, distinct, or how much of a disagreement are we seeing amongst central bankers. And that's going to be something that we absolutely want to pay attention to. Also, we want to pay attention to a lot of earnings, right? And I'm going to go ahead, we're going to continue talking about Tesla, but it's important to look at all these other factors, right? In a video previously, I talked about Walmart having their earnings further on this week, and I talked about how it's important to pay attention to Walmart because Walmart is the largest employee in the nation, right? Employer in the nation, sorry. And so, obviously, if Walmart's earnings are not good, well, that could, cause a concern that they may lay off, some more of their employees. And when I mentioned that in a previous video, someone commented saying, well, what does it matter? Somewhat along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, that it really doesn't matter if Walmart employees get laid off because how many of them could afford Teslas? And I could see where someone would come to that idea, but one of the things you have to understand is that, okay, if people are laid off, that means that they're less likely to spend and move their money to other businesses. For example, it's not necessarily that Walmart employees are buying Teslas, but maybe they're going out and using their Walmart paychecks to go out to restaurants, right? Or to go, spend on some other experience that other business owners who are collecting all this, capital, right, are able to, receive all that money coming in to go ahead and buy Tesla. So of course, if we see less people working, well, that means less of capital circulating in the economy, and that means the people who do make enough money to buy Teslas, they may feel an impact. And so that's why it's important to pay attention to the labor markets and even the Walmart employees. I mean, yeah, maybe most of them can't buy Teslas. I don't know their financial situations, although we know that auto loans are fairly high right now. But it's important to pay attention to that. Now, what is my view on Tesla in the long term? One of the things I've often said is that, fundamentally, Tesla, I believe, is still in the lead as far as the EV race goes. And that, they're one of the only companies that's still able to scale and continue scaling up as this massive level. We're seeing Ford and GM talk about scaling up and then kind of having to revise their projections for when can they actually, produce more vehicles versus Tesla's actually delivering them. And so that's why, I'm optimistic for Tesla once we're out of this downshift in the economic cycle. And I believe that Tesla's definitely going to thrive. If you remember back in 2008 when a lot of companies, or even if you go to the dot-com bubble, right, in 1999, right? A lot of companies that failed at that time, well, we can't see that with Tesla. Let's go ahead and look at QQQ. Go to a monthly view, right? A lot of the companies that did poorly, right, after the 2000 crash, a lot of them, obviously ceased to exist now, but the ones that were still able to survive, those are the ones that thrived. I mean, think about names like Amazon, right? Think about a lot of the tech companies that we know today where, yeah, they suffered massively back in the 2000s, but they were able to survive. And so if Tesla, well, not if, but when Tesla survives this downshift in the economic cycle, I believe that Tesla is going to be positioned much more better than a lot of these other legacy automakers that are trying to enter to the EV space, and they're actually unprofitable. Right now, of course, we have Rivian, who's still able to produce vehicles, and so that's something that we want to pay attention to. But I believe that Tesla is much more better positioned. Now, the valuation that many are putting for Tesla in the long term is based off the concept or the premise of autonomous driving, and I still think that Tesla's in the lead for that as well, right? Now, of course, Waymo and Cruise and some of these other companies, they have a higher level for fully self-driving, but I think that Tesla has the advantage of more drivers on the road able to collect data to ensure that Tesla is going to be better positioned for fully self-autonomous driving when it does come out. And so that's why I'm bullish on Tesla in the long term. Of course, you have the other factors like the robots, although you can't put a valuation on that. I mentioned that in yesterday's video. And so, in the short term, still bearish, right? I believe that we may see a little bit of a relief, but I still hold the idea that my range for Tesla right now is I want to pay attention. I've been saying this for a while, the low 200s, right? I want to pay attention to how Tesla's looking at the 215 to 230 range, right? Because we have this volume pocket where there's very little volume by price. And so if Tesla falls down here and there's selling pressure, well, it could be very sharp as it goes down. And so that's something that we absolutely want to pay attention to. Just because you have a mini rally up does not mean that it's going to be sustained, and we could still see some relief with Tesla and then again see some further off selling, right? Of course, once we start going back to the fundamentals in the next earnings, that's where we're really going to want to see what's going on, right? And so that's something I've been saying now for a while. People have been saying I was crazy to see Tesla go down low, and we're not too far from the low 200s as I've been calling out for a while now. I mean, Tesla, after their earnings has fell down almost 20%, so a tremendous amount, and so we're not too far off. I do expect some relief, although we have to be data dependent and pay attention to catalyst events. I mean, they could come at any moment. Just as last night we heard that China, Tesla in China is obviously doing more price cuts, and the market didn't like that. Investors, market participants did not like that at all for Tesla. But with that said, guys, I want to keep this video very short, sweet, and concise. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below for Tesla, both in the long term and in the short term. And what is your view on the economy? What is also your view on energy in the short term? I mean, with these gas prices going up, and how that's going to affect inflation. So definitely let me know in the comment section below. Again, make sure to check out the links, as one of the links is a link to the Push and Profit private group and a link to join our free weekly newsletter. So definitely take advantage of those links. And I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Take care, guys.